My name is Abigail, 31 years old, and the black sheep of my family despite my success. I arrived at my parents' 35th anniversary celebration at the Riverside Grill, excited to finally reconnect. The shock on their faces wasn't happiness. "You were not invited," my father hissed. When I refused to leave, security was called. "Get this beggar out," he spat, unaware. "I funded half the party." I walked away quietly, then canceled $62,000 worth of support. Minutes later, my phone exploded with calls as someone pounded on my door. If you are watching this, I would love to know where you are from. Please hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you have ever felt like an outsider in your own family. Trust me, this story about family betrayal and standing up for yourself is one you will not want to miss. I grew up in a picture-perfect house in suburban Connecticut, where appearances always mattered more than reality. My parents, Robert and Diana, built their lives around status and social climbing. From the outside, we looked like the ideal upper-middle-class family, with our matching outfits in Christmas photos and perfect lawn that my father obsessed over every weekend. But inside those walls, I always felt like I was wearing someone else's shoes that never quite fit. My brother James was the firstborn golden child who followed our father into finance. My sister Catherine became the surgeon my mother always wanted to be before she married Dad. And then there was me, Abigail, the creative one who loved art and storytelling. The disappointment in my parents' eyes when I chose to study design instead of business or medicine is something I can still see when I close my eyes at night. "Art is a hobby, not a career," my father would say, his voice dripping with condescension. "No one makes real money that way." My mother would add her trademark passive-aggressive comment, "We just worry about your future, sweetheart. Not everyone can be special enough to succeed in something so unreliable." I moved out at 18, supporting myself through college with 3 jobs while my siblings had their apartments and tuition fully paid. I slept 4 hours a night, ate ramen for weeks straight, and never asked my parents for a penny, even when I had to visit the emergency room for exhaustion. Pride and determination became my only companions. The irony is that by 30 I had built a design agency that out-earned both my brother's finance job and my sister's medical practice combined. My company, Creative Vision, grew from just me in a tiny apartment to a team of 28 talented designers with clients across North America. Last year, we cleared 7 figures in profit. Did my success change my parents' view of me? Not really. At family gatherings, they would introduce James as our son, the investment banker, and Catherine as our daughter, the brilliant surgeon, while I was just Abigail. No title, no acknowledgement of my achievements. They would politely change the subject when anyone asked about my business. Over the past few years, I had been making attempts at reconciliation, not because I needed their approval anymore, but because I thought having a relationship with my aging parents was important. I started accepting more invitations to family events, sending thoughtful gifts, and calling more regularly. What my family did not know was that I had also been helping them financially. 3 years ago, when my father had to take early retirement due to health issues, and they were struggling with mortgage payments, I anonymously set up an account that deposited $3,000 monthly into their bank account. My parents assumed it was some kind of retirement benefit they had forgotten about. When Catherine needed a down payment for her house last year, I gave her $50,000 through a lawyer who presented it as a medical professional grant. And when James struggled with student loan payments after a divorce, I quietly paid off $80,000 of his debt, making it look like a bank forgiveness program. Most recently, when my parents mentioned they wanted to celebrate their 35th anniversary, but could not afford anything fancy, I secretly arranged to pay for half of a lavish party at the Riverside Grill, the most exclusive restaurant in town. I told the event planner to credit it to the whole family, so my siblings could share in the gesture, without knowing I had contributed most of the money. I honestly thought this celebration might be the turning point for our family. Maybe seeing everyone happy together would finally heal old wounds. There had been hints in recent weeks that something was off, though. Hushed phone conversations that ended when I entered the room. group text messages between my siblings and parents that excluded me. But I convinced myself I was being paranoid, that years of feeling like an outsider had made me overly sensitive. The week before the anniversary dinner, I bought them a pair of tickets to Alaska, a dream trip they had talked about for years, but could never afford. I wrapped the gift beautifully, added a heartfelt card, and felt genuinely excited to give it to them. For once, I would be able to openly show my love and support, instead of hiding behind anonymous donations. How wrong I was. The morning of my parents' anniversary celebration, I woke up with a sense of hopeful anticipation I had not felt about a family event in years. I spent extra time getting ready, choosing a sleek navy blue dress that projected both success and appropriateness for the occasion. I styled my hair into an elegant updo, applied natural-looking makeup, and selected my most tasteful jewelry. Looking in the mirror, I hoped that tonight might finally be the night my parents saw me as the accomplished woman I had become, not the disappointing daughter who had chosen the wrong path. The gift tickets to Alaska were nestled in a silver envelope inside a small box, wrapped in pearlescent paper, topped with a ribbon that matched the blue of my dress. I had even coordinated with the travel agent to have a special folder with all the excursion options they could choose from: dog sledding, glacier tours, wildlife watching, northern lights, viewing, all of it paid in advance. $8,000 that I was happy to spend, if it meant seeing genuine joy on their faces. I arrived at the Riverside Grill 30 minutes before the scheduled start time. The restaurant was perched on a cliff overlooking the river valley, its windows reflecting the golden sunset. Valet attendants in crisp uniforms greeted guests as they arrived, and a doorman held open heavy oak doors emblazoned with the restaurant's logo. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast warm light over marble floors and mahogany furniture. This was exactly the kind of place my parents loved, where prestige was served alongside the food. "Good evening. I am here for the Franklin anniversary celebration," I told the hostess, referring to my parents by their last name. She consulted her tablet, scrolling through the list with a manicured finger. "I am sorry, I do not see your name on the guest list. May I have your name again?" "Abigail Franklin," I replied, a small knot forming in my stomach. "I am Robert and Diana's daughter." The hostess checked again, her smile faltering slightly. "I am sorry, Miss Franklin, but your name is not on the list provided by the hosts." "There must be some mistake," I said, forcing a laugh. "It is my parents' anniversary party." As we spoke, I glanced past her into the main dining room. Through the doorway I could see my family already gathered. My father in his best charcoal suit, my mother radiant in a silver dress, James and Catherine standing nearby with their spouses. Everyone was laughing, champagne flutes in hand. There were other guests too, family, friends, and colleagues I recognized. At least 30 people had already arrived. Something was definitely wrong. The party was not scheduled to begin for another 20 minutes, yet everyone was already there, enjoying themselves without me. Had the time been changed? Had I somehow missed a message? I made a decision. I will just go in and speak with my parents. I am sure this is just a miscommunication. Before the hostess could stop me, I walked past her into the dining room, gift box clutched in my hands. As I approached the gathering, my mother was the first to notice me. Her smile froze, eyes widening in what looked unmistakably like alarm. She quickly touched my father's arm, whispering something to him. He turned, and the jovial expression he had been wearing transformed into a cold, hard stare. James and Catherine exchanged glances, their body language shifting uncomfortably. Other guests began to notice the sudden tension, conversations faltering as attention turned toward the unfolding scene. "Abigail," my father said, his voice carrying in the now quieting room. "What are you doing here?" I felt dozens of eyes on me as I stood there, confusion giving way to a sickening realization. "It is Mom and Dad's anniversary," I said, my voice sounding smaller than I intended. "Why would I not be here?" My mother stepped forward, her smile strained and not reaching her eyes. "Sweetie, we did not expect you. This is just a small gathering for close family and friends. Close family. The words hit me like a physical blow. If this was for close family, what did that make me? Catherine would not meet my eyes. James studied his shoes. Neither spoke up to welcome me or express surprise at my absence from the guest list. There must be some mistake, I said again, the gift box now feeling heavy in my hands. I even helped with the arrangements. My father's expression darkened further. There is no mistake, Abigail. You were not invited to this event. The silence that followed my father's words seemed to stretch forever. Around us, guests pretended not to listen, while obviously straining to hear every word. My mother fidgeted with her pearl necklace, a nervous habit she had displayed throughout my childhood whenever conflict arose. Catherine examined her manicure with sudden intense interest, while James took a long drink from his champagne flute, avoiding eye contact entirely. I do not understand, I said, my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions brewing inside. This is a family celebration. I am your daughter. My father stepped closer, lowering his voice, but not enough to prevent nearby guests from hearing. This event is for people who are actually part of our lives, Abigail. Not someone who drops in when it is convenient, and then disappears. The irony of his statement was staggering. I had been the one making all the effort at reconciliation for years. I had been the one calling, visiting, reaching out consistently. That is not fair, I protested. I have been trying to be part of this family. I call every week. I visit whenever you will let me. My mother finally spoke up, her voice syrupy sweet but her eyes cold. Darling, this is not the time or place to discuss family matters. Perhaps we can talk another day. This evening is special for us. I noticed several of their friends exchanging uncomfortable glances. In Mrs. Patterson, my mother's bridge club friend, actually looked sympathetic, while Dr. Anderson, my father's golf buddy, studied his wine glass with unusual concentration. I brought you a gift, I said, holding out the carefully wrapped box, for your anniversary. My mother made no move to take it. You can drop it with the others, she said, gesturing vaguely toward a table in the corner, where several packages were stacked. I stood there, gift in hand, feeling increasingly like an intruder at an event I had helped finance. The weight of public rejection in front of their social circle made my chest tighten painfully. I think you should go, Abigail, my father said, no longer bothering to keep his voice down. This is embarrassing for everyone. Embarrassing, I repeated, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. I am embarrassing to you. You always did have a flair for the dramatic, he replied dismissively. Always making scenes, always demanding attention. I looked to my siblings for support, for any sign that they disagreed with this treatment, but found none. Catherine was whispering something to her husband, while James had mysteriously found the need to check his phone. Fine, I said, my voice now barely above a whisper. I will leave, but first you should know that I paid for half of this party. The venue, the catering, the champagne you are drinking right now, that was me. My father's face flushed red. Whether from embarrassment or anger, I could not tell. That is ridiculous. James and Catherine arranged everything. When I did not back down or retract my statement, his expression changed. Something ugly passed across his features. Security, he called out, gesturing to a staff member near the door. We have an unwanted guest who needs to be escorted out. A murmur rippled through the assembled guests. The security guard, a tall man in a black suit, approached uncertainly, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Sir, he questioned, looking between us. Remove this person, my father said, pointing at me as if I were a stranger. She is crashing our private event and causing a disturbance. Dad, I said, shock making my voice crack. You cannot be serious. That was when he delivered the blow I will never forget. Loud enough for everyone to hear, clear enough that there could be no misunderstanding, he said. Get this beggar out of here. She is nothing but an embarrassment, showing up uninvited, claiming to have paid for things, probably hoping for a handout. Gasps came from several guests. Even the security guard looked taken aback. "Mr. Franklin," the guard began, "perhaps we could handle this more discreetly." But my father was past the point of discretion. Now he demanded, "Or, I will speak to your manager about the kind of establishment they are running." I looked at my mother, searching for any sign of maternal protection, any indication she would stand up to him. But she simply looked away, her social mask firmly in place. "It is okay," I told the guard, finding dignity from somewhere deep inside. "I will see myself out." I placed my gift on a nearby table, straightened my shoulders, and walked toward the exit with measured steps. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape the humiliation as quickly as possible, but I would not give my father the satisfaction of seeing me flee. As I passed the hostess stand, I caught a glimpse of myself in a decorative mirror. Somehow, I still looked put together. No one would guess from my appearance the devastation I felt inside. It was only when I reached my car in the parking lot that the tears came. I sat behind the wheel, shaking, as 31 years of seeking approval and love crashed down around me. Through the windshield, I could see the restaurant windows glowing warmly against the darkening sky. Inside, my family would continue their celebration as if I had never existed. I started the engine and drove away, leaving behind not just the restaurant, but the last remnants of hope that my family would ever truly accept me. The drive home passed in a blur of streetlights and tears. My makeup was ruined, mascara tracking dark rivers down my cheeks. I kept replaying my father's words in my mind. Beggar. Embarrassment. Uninvited. Each repetition was like a fresh cut, sharp and painful. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the initial shock had begun to harden into something else. Not quite anger yet, but a cold clarity that felt unfamiliar. I sat in my car for several minutes, staring at the home I had built for myself, without their help. The contemporary 2-story house with large windows and a professionally landscaped yard was physical proof of what I had accomplished on my own. Inside, I kicked off my heels and headed straight for the kitchen. I pulled a bottle of red wine from the rack, poured a generous glass, and carried it to my home office. Settling into my leather chair, I opened my laptop and began to take stock of exactly what I had been doing for my family. First, I logged into my banking portal. There it was, the standing monthly transfer of $3,000 to my parents' account disguised as retirement supplement. $36,000 annually that they had never questioned or acknowledged. I had been making these payments for 3 years, which totaled $108,000 so far. Next, I opened a folder labeled Family Support and reviewed the documents inside. There was the $50,000 grant to Catherine for her house down payment, the $80,000 student loan payoff for James, the insurance premiums I had been covering for my parents, approximately $700 monthly for the past 2 years. Then there were the smaller expenses that added up, the subscription services I paid for them, the housekeeping service that came twice weekly to my parents' home, the landscaper who maintained their yard, the meal delivery service I had arranged when my mother complained about cooking. Together these added another $12,000 annually. And finally, the anniversary celebration itself. I pulled up the invoice from the event planner. My contribution was exactly $22,000 for a party where I was not welcome. As I tallied everything up, a text message notification appeared on my phone. It was from my cousin Rachel, who had apparently been invited to the party. "Hey, where are you?" everyone's asking. "Your parents said you had a work emergency." So they were already spinning a story to explain my absence. Work emergency. How convenient. Another text came through, this one from my Aunt Susan. "Abby, are you okay? Just got to your parents' party and heard you couldn't make it. Call me later." They had invited extended family members but not their own daughter. The realization was like ice water in my veins. I took a deep breath and made a decision. Opening my banking app, I canceled the monthly transfer to my parents. Then I sent an email to the property management company handling their landscaping and housekeeping services, terminating the contracts effective immediately. One by one, I canceled every subscription, every service, every financial support mechanism I had put in place. For Catherine's grant, I could not take back the money already given, but I had been making the payments in installments. I canceled the remaining $30,000 that had not yet been disbursed. Next, I contacted the travel agency and canceled the Alaska trip tickets. The agent was apologetic, but understanding when I explained there had been a family emergency. The $8,000 refund would be processed within 3 to 5 business days. I sent a brief professional email to my family accountant. Effective immediately, I am withdrawing all financial support previously provided to Robert and Diana Franklin, James Franklin, and Catherine Franklin Wilson. Please ensure no further transfers are made from any of my accounts to these individuals. Any automatic payments already established should be terminated at once. The accountant responded within minutes, confirming he would take care of it right away. Finally, I called the event planner for my parents' anniversary party. Amanda, this is Abigail Franklin. Abigail, is everything okay? I thought you would be at the celebration by now. There has been a change of plans, I said, keeping my voice even. I need you to inform the venue that my portion of the funding has been withdrawn. Withdrawn. But the event is happening right now. The initial payments have already been processed. Then they will need to collect the remaining balance from whoever is hosting the event. As far as I am concerned, that is no longer me. After hanging up, I set my phone to Do Not Disturb and poured another glass of wine. The systematic dismantling of my financial support had taken less than an hour. $62,000 of immediate support and commitments had been canceled, with thousands more in monthly payments stopped. I felt a strange mixture of liberation and grief. On one hand, it was empowering to finally stop the one-sided giving that had characterized our relationship. On the other, it represented the final severing of hope that things would ever change. As I sat there in the growing darkness, I realized I had spent years buying the approval and love of people who were incapable of giving it freely. Tonight had simply made visible what had always been true. In their eyes, I would never be enough. I took my wine to the bathroom, ran a hot bath and sank into the water, letting it wash away the remnants of makeup and the invisible stain of public rejection. Tomorrow would be soon enough to face the consequences of my actions. Tonight I would grieve for the family I had always wanted, but never truly had. I woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through my bedroom windows and an unusual silence from my phone. Normally my mornings began with the ping of email notifications and text messages, but I had left it on Do Not Disturb overnight. When I finally reached for my phone and turned off the setting, it immediately began to vibrate continuously as notifications flooded in. 36 missed calls, 17 voicemails, 42 text messages. The first voicemail was from my father, time-stamped at 11:30 p.m. last night. His voice slurred slightly from what I assumed was expensive champagne. Abigail, the restaurant is saying there is some problem with the payment. Call me back immediately. The second voicemail from 12:15 a.m. was less controlled. What the hell do you think you are doing? The venue manager is threatening to charge us an additional $20,000. Fix this now. By the third voicemail at 1:20 a.m., he had progressed to outright threats. If you do not resolve this situation by morning, there will be serious consequences. Your mother is in tears. Is that what you wanted? The text messages followed a similar pattern, starting with demands and escalating to pleas as the night progressed. My mother's texts began appearing around 2 a.m. Emotional appeals about how I was ruining their special night and how they did not understand why I would do something so vindictive. James texted at 3:12 a.m. What the actual hell, Abby? Mom and Dad had to put the rest of the party on their credit card. Dad is having chest pains from the stress. Is this because you were not invited? Grow up. Catherine's message came in at 4:45 a.m. The bank just called Dad. Something about the mortgage payment being canceled. What are you doing? By morning, the tone had shifted dramatically. My father's latest voicemail was subdued, almost unrecognizable. Abigail, We need to talk. Please call me. It is important. My mother had sent a text at 7:30 a.m. Sweetie, please call us. We are very confused about what is happening. Your father is worried about the mortgage. I set the phone down and went to make coffee, my hands steady, despite the emotional storm their messages had unleashed. As the coffee brewed, filling my kitchen with its rich aroma, I contemplated my next move. Part of me wanted to respond immediately to explain exactly why I had canceled everything. Another part, the wounded child who had always sought their approval, wanted to apologize and fix everything. I did neither. Instead, I got dressed for work, ate a proper breakfast, and left for my office as if it were any normal day. My company would not run itself, and I had client meetings scheduled that I refused to cancel because of family drama. Throughout the morning, the calls continued. I instructed my assistant to tell any family members who called the office that I was unavailable. By lunchtime, my parents had apparently contacted every mutual acquaintance and family member they could think of, as I began receiving concerned messages from cousins, family, friends, and even my mother's hairdresser. Rachel, my cousin, who had been at the party, stopped by my office unannounced. "Abby, what is going on?" she asked as she sat across from my desk. "Your parents are freaking out, saying you canceled their mortgage payment and something about the anniversary party bill. They are telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown." I took a deep breath. "Rachel, did they mention what happened at the party last night? That I showed up and was publicly thrown out?" Her eyes widened. "What? No. They said you had a work emergency and could not make it. They seemed disappointed, but understanding." "That is not what happened," I said, and proceeded to tell her the real story. Rachel listened, her expression shifting from confusion to horror. "They called security on you, after you paid for half the party. That is insane. And did you know I have been making their mortgage payments for the past 3 years? Or that I gave Catherine $50,000 for her house, or paid off James's student loans?" "No," she said quietly. "They never mentioned any of that. They always talk about how successful James and Catherine are, how they have helped your parents so much." "Exactly. Meanwhile, I have been the one actually supporting them financially, all while being treated like the family disappointment." After Rachel left, promising to keep our conversation confidential, I returned to my work. It was nearly 5 p.m. when my assistant buzzed me. "Miss Franklin, your father is here. He does not have an appointment, but he is insisting on seeing you." A knot formed in my stomach, but I kept my voice steady. "Tell him I am in a meeting and unavailable." 10 minutes later, she buzzed again, sounding uncomfortable. "He is refusing to leave. He says he will wait in the lobby all night if necessary." "Call security and have him escorted out, if he becomes disruptive," I instructed, then added more gently, "It is not your problem to solve, Lisa. You can go home for the day if you are uncomfortable." But before she could respond, my office door burst open. My father stood there, looking nothing like the imposing figure from my childhood. His normally immaculate appearance was disheveled, his eyes bloodshot from either lack of sleep or tears, I could not tell which. "Abigail," he said, his voice hoarse, "we need to talk." I remained seated behind my desk. "This is my workplace. You cannot just barge in here." "You left me no choice. You will not answer your phone. What have you done?" "I think you know exactly what I have done," I replied, surprised by how calm I felt. "I have stopped paying for a family that does not want me." He took a step forward. "This is childish revenge. Your mother is beside herself. The mortgage company called this morning. The landscaper showed up to say services have been terminated. What are you trying to prove?" "I am not trying to prove anything. I am simply no longer willing to financially support people who would call security to remove me from a party I helped pay for. Who would call their own daughter a beggar in front of their friends?" His face flushed. I was upset. "You showed up uninvited." "To my own parents' anniversary celebration. A celebration I contributed $22,000 toward." He stared at me clearly, struggling to process this information. What are you talking about? James and Catherine arranged everything. Did they tell you that? Because I have the receipts showing exactly what I paid. Just like I have documentation of every mortgage payment, every bill, every support payment I have made for this family over the past 3 years. For perhaps the first time in my life, I saw my father at a loss for words. He sank into the chair across from my desk, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years. Why would you not tell us you were helping? He finally asked. Would it have mattered? Would you have treated me any differently? Or would you have just expected it, like you expect everything else? He had no answer, and after a long tense silence, I stood up. I have a dinner meeting. I need to leave. Abigail, please. Your mother and I cannot afford the mortgage on our own. We are on a fixed income. Then perhaps it is time to downsize, I said, gathering my things. Or ask your successful children, James and Catherine, for help. I am sure they would be happy to support the parents they actually respect. As I walked toward the door, he made one final attempt. We are still your parents. I paused, hand on the doorknob. Yes, you are, and nothing can change that. But being family does not give you the right to treat me like I do not matter. It does not entitle you to my money or my support. I left him sitting there, and as the elevator doors closed behind me, I realized that for the first time in my adult life, I had spoken my truth to my father, without backing down or seeking his approval. 3 days passed, with relative quiet. The phone calls had tapered off, replaced by occasional text messages, with a markedly different tone. Gone were the demands and accusations, replaced by awkward attempts at reconciliation from my mother, and terse practical questions about finances from my father. I maintained my distance, responding only to direct questions with brief, factual answers. Part of me expected them to simply find another way to cover their expenses, and fade back into the pattern of distant disapproval that had characterized our relationship for years. What I did not expect was what happened on the 4th day, after the disastrous anniversary party. I was in a client meeting in our conference room, when Lisa knocked and entered with an apologetic expression. I am sorry to interrupt, Miss Franklin, but your family is here. My family? I repeated, confused. Your parents, your brother, and your sister. They are all in the lobby and insisting on seeing you. They say they will not leave until you speak with them. My clients looked at me with curiosity. I apologized for the interruption and asked for a 15-minute break, which they graciously granted. When I entered the lobby, the scene was surreal. My father stood near the reception desk, my mother perched nervously on a visitor chair, while James paced by the windows, and Catherine examined the awards and press mentions displayed on the walls. They all turned to look at me as I approached. This is my workplace, I said quietly, but firmly. Whatever this is about, it could have waited until after business hours. We tried that approach, James replied. You have been avoiding us for days. I have been working. Some of us have businesses to run. My father stepped forward. Abigail, we need to resolve this situation, as a family. I looked around at the open office space where several of my employees were pretending not to watch the unfolding drama. Not here. I have clients waiting. Then when Catherine demanded, You will not return calls. You will not agree to meet. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad are getting collection notices. Her comment ignited something in me. Collection notices. After 3 days. That seems unlikely, Catherine. But then again, this family has always had a flair for the dramatic when it suits them. My mother stood up, tears glistening in her eyes. Please, Abigail. We just want to understand what is happening. Fine, I said after a moment. Wait for me in the small conference room. I pointed to a glass-enclosed space near the back of the office. I will join you as soon as I can reschedule my current meeting. 20 minutes later, having apologized profusely to my clients and rescheduled for the following day, I entered the conference room and closed the door behind me. My family sat around the table, an uncomfortable silence hanging over them. You have 30 minutes, I said, remaining standing. I have another appointment after this. My father cleared his throat. We need to discuss the financial arrangements you apparently had in place. Arrangements we knew nothing about. What is there to discuss? I was helping the family financially. Now I am not. It is quite simple. But why keep it secret? My mother asked. Why not tell us you were paying our mortgage? Would it have changed anything? Would you have suddenly respected my career choices? Stopped introducing James and Catherine as the successful children while barely acknowledging me? Invited me to family events instead of treating me like an embarrassing obligation? The silence that followed was answer enough. Catherine spoke next, her voice tight with what sounded like a mixture of shame and defensiveness. So this is punishment for not inviting you to the anniversary party. No, Catherine. This is consequences. For years of treatment that culminated in having me thrown out of an event, I helped fund being called a beggar by my own father, and then having all of you stand by and say nothing. We did not know you had paid for part of the party, James interjected. Would it have mattered if you did? I challenged. He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Let me ask you something, I continued. Did you ever wonder how Mom and Dad could afford their lifestyle on Dad's early retirement and Mom's part-time work? Did you think about how they maintained that big house, paid for landscaping and housekeeping, took those weekend trips? Catherine shifted uncomfortably. We assumed they had savings, investments. And your house down payment? The mysterious grant that came right when you needed it. James's student loans that suddenly got forgiven after his divorce. Understanding dawned on their faces, followed quickly by discomfort. That was you, James asked quietly. I nodded. All of it. Over $200,000 in the past 3 years alone. My mother let out a small gasp. But why would you do that and not tell us? Because I wanted to help without strings. Without making you feel indebted. And honestly, because I knew that even if I told you, you would find a way to diminish it, to make it seem less significant than if James or Catherine had done the same thing. My father, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. I do not understand why you would give so much, if you felt we did not appreciate you. The simple honesty of his question caught me off guard. Because that is what family does. They support each other. Even when it is hard. Even when it is not reciprocated. I kept hoping that eventually something would change. That eventually I would be enough. My mother began to cry in earnest now. I never knew you felt this way. I never meant to make you feel less than your siblings. But you did. All of you did. Every time you dismissed my career as a hobby. Every time you praised James and Catherine's choices while questioning mine. Every time you excluded me from family decisions or events. The anniversary party, my father began, then stopped, seeming to struggle with what to say next. We did not invite you because your mother was worried. Worried about what? My mother wiped her eyes. That you would outshine us, she admitted, in a small voice. With your success, your confidence, the way you carry yourself now. I was afraid our friends would see how accomplished you have become and wonder why we never talk about you the way we talk about James and Catherine. The admission hit me like a physical blow. All these years I had assumed they were embarrassed by my creative career, my different path. I never considered they might be jealous of my success. So, you excluded me, because I am too successful now. That makes even less sense. It was not rational, my mother admitted. It was fear and pride, and yes, jealousy. You built something remarkable, all on your own, without our help or approval. It made me question every judgment I have ever made about you. James leaned forward. For what it is worth, I had no idea you were the one who paid off my loans. I really thought it was some kind of forgiveness program. I would have thanked you if I had known. Would you have been embarrassed that your little sister had to bail you out? His silence was telling. Catherine, always the most direct of us, asked the question they had clearly come to resolve. Are you going to restart the payments? The mortgage? The services? No, I said simply. That chapter is closed. If you want to help Mom and Dad, you are welcome to step up. I have done my part for years while being treated like an outsider. That ends now. We cannot afford to help them the way you were, Catherine admitted. Not with my kids' private school and James's alimony payments. That is not my problem anymore, I replied, surprised by how liberating it felt to say those words. Now, if there is nothing else I need to prepare for my next meeting. As they gathered their things to leave, my father paused. The anniversary dinner. The venue manager said someone called to withdraw funding during the event itself. Was that your doing? Yes, I admitted. After being escorted out of a party I helped pay for, I called to withdraw my contribution. I assume they charged the remaining balance to whoever provided the credit card on file. That would be me, he said quietly. $22,000 on my card? Money I do not have. Again, not my problem, I said, holding the door open for them to leave. You made your choices. I made mine. As they filed out, my mother was the last to leave. She stopped in front of me, her eyes red from crying. I am sorry, Abigail. Truly. I never meant for things to be this way. For the first time in days, I felt my resolve waver slightly. I know, Mom, but sorry is not enough anymore. Not after everything that has happened. She nodded sadly and followed the others toward the exit, leaving me standing in the doorway watching the family. I had tried so hard to please walk away. The truth finally exposed between us. 2 weeks passed before I heard from any family member again. Those 14 days were strange, filled with a mixture of grief and liberation. I threw myself into work, finalized a major new client contract, and spent evenings with friends who had always valued me for exactly who I was. For the first time since I could remember, I was not carrying the invisible weight of seeking approval from people who seemed determined to withhold it. The first to reach out was surprisingly my brother James. His text was simple. Can we meet for coffee? Just us. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe near my office. He arrived before me, already seated with 2 cups of coffee when I walked in. I got you a vanilla latte, he said as I sat down. You still like those, right? The fact that he remembered my coffee preference, this small detail of my life, touched me unexpectedly. Thank you, I said, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. How are things? Complicated, he admitted. Mom and Dad are downsizing. They put the house on the market last week. They cannot afford the payments without your help, and neither Catherine nor I can cover that kind of expense. I nodded, waiting for him to continue. I never knew, he said after a moment, about everything you were doing for them, for us. I feel like an idiot for not questioning where all that support was coming from. You believed what was convenient to believe, I replied, without malice. We all do sometimes. He looked down at his coffee. I want to apologize. For not standing up for you at the party. For not questioning why you were not invited in the first place. I knew it was wrong, but I did not say anything. Why not? He sighed. Because it was easier not to rock the boat. Because I have always been the golden child, and that position comes with unspoken rules. One of them is never questioning Mom and Dad's decisions. For perhaps the first time I saw my brother clearly, not as the favored son, who had everything handed to him, but as someone trapped in a role that came with its own set of pressures and expectations. I always envied you, you know, he said suddenly. Me? Why would you envy me? Your freedom. Your courage to pursue what you wanted, despite their disapproval. I followed the path they laid out for me without question, and now I am in a career I do not even particularly enjoy, divorced at 36, and still seeking their approval for every decision I make. Our conversation lasted nearly 3 hours, covering ground we had never explored before. I learned that James had wanted to study music in college, but had been steered firmly toward business by our father. That his marriage had failed partly because he had married someone our parents approved of rather than following his heart. That he had always admired my independence, even while participating in the family dynamic that excluded me. "What happens now?" he asked as we prepared to leave. "With the family, I mean." "I do not know," I answered honestly. "But whatever happens, it has to be different than before." My sister Catherine reached out next, but her approach was less conciliatory. She invited me to lunch at an expensive restaurant, then spent the first 20 minutes justifying why she had never questioned the family's treatment of me. "We were raised to respect Mom and Dad's decisions," she said, echoing James's sentiment but with a defensive edge. "And you were always so different, Abigail. Always challenging everything, always going your own way. That does not justify excluding me from family events or standing by while Dad called me a beggar." She had the grace to look ashamed. "No, it does not. That was horrible, and I should have said something." As the meal progressed, Catherine's defensiveness gradually gave way to more honest reflection. She admitted that she had always felt pressure to be perfect to maintain her status as the successful daughter, especially after I began to build my business. "It was easier when you were struggling," she confessed. "It fit the narrative. Creative but impractical. Abigail needing to learn the hard way that the real world does not reward dreamers. When you started succeeding, it threatened that whole story. So you participated in pushing me away." "Not consciously," she protested, then paused. "But yes, I suppose that is what happened." By the end of lunch, we had reached an understanding, if not a complete reconciliation. Catherine, unlike James, was still struggling to fully acknowledge her role in the family dynamic, but she had taken the first steps. My mother came to my house the following Sunday afternoon alone. She looked smaller, somehow less put together than usual. We sat in my living room, the silence between us heavy, with decades of unspoken words. "The house is under contract," she said finally. "We found a nice 2-bedroom condo closer to town. It is actually a relief in some ways. The big house was becoming too much to manage." "That sounds like a good move," I replied neutral, but not cold. "Abigail," she began, then stopped struggling with what to say next. "I have been doing a lot of thinking these past weeks, about why I treated you the way I did. Why I allowed your father to treat you that way." I waited, giving her space to continue. "I was jealous," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, "of your courage, your talent, your unwillingness to settle. I gave up my dreams of becoming a doctor to marry your father and raise a family. I told myself it was what I wanted, what any good woman would want. And then you came along so determined to forge your own path, so unwilling to compromise on your dreams." Tears filled her eyes. "Every time you succeeded despite our lack of support, it was like a judgment on the choices I had made, on the life I had settled for. It was easier to diminish your achievements than to face my own regrets." Her honesty cracked something open in me, allowing compassion to flow where hurt had resided for so long. "Mom, I never judged your choices. I just wanted the freedom to make my own." "I know that now," she said, reaching for my hand. "And I am so proud of what you have built, Abigail. So proud of the woman you have become, even though I had very little to do with shaping her." We talked for hours. Really talked, perhaps for the first time in my adult life. She shared regrets and dreams I had never known she harbored. I shared the pain of years of seeking approval that never came. By the time she left, something had shifted between us, a new understanding, taking root where resentment had grown for so long. My father was the last to reach out and the most difficult to reconcile with. He requested a meeting at a park near their old house, a neutral ground where we had sometimes gone for family picnics when I was very young. He was waiting on a bench when I arrived, looking out over the pond where ducks swam lazily in the afternoon sun. He stood as I approached, his posture stiff, uncomfortable. "Thank you for coming," he said formally, as if greeting a business associate rather than his daughter. We sat side by side, watching the ducks in silence for several minutes before he spoke again. "I have never been good at apologies," he began, "or at admitting when I am wrong. Your mother says that is where you get your stubbornness from." Despite everything, this small comparison, this acknowledgement of a shared trait, warmed something in me. The things I said at the restaurant, he continued. The way I treated you. It was unforgivable. Then why did you do it? He sighed heavily. Pride. Injured pride. When you walked in unexpectedly, looking so confident, so successful, I panicked. We had deliberately excluded you, and being confronted with that decision in front of all our friends was humiliating, so I lashed out. You called security on your own daughter. I did, and I have to live with that shame. He turned to look at me directly. The truth is, Abigail, I have never understood you. Your choices, your determination to go your own way. It frightened me because I could not control it, and what I cannot control I have always tried to diminish. It was perhaps the most honest thing my father had ever said to me. Not an apology exactly, but an acknowledgement, a recognition of the dynamic that had shaped our relationship for so long. I do not expect you to forgive me, he continued, or to resume the financial support. We are managing without it, and perhaps it is better this way, healthier. Yes, I agreed, it is. We talked for a while longer, not resolving everything but beginning the slow work of building something new from the ashes of what had been destroyed. Before we parted, he asked hesitantly, would you consider coming to dinner next Sunday, at the new condo, just family? Your mother would like that very much. I considered for a moment. I will think about it. 2 months after the disastrous anniversary party, we gathered for a family dinner at my parents' new condo. It was nothing like the elaborate celebrations of the past, just a simple meal around a modest dining table. James brought his new girlfriend, a music teacher he had met at a community concert. Catherine came without her husband, who was home with their children. The conversation was sometimes awkward, occasionally tense, but also punctuated by moments of surprising honesty and even laughter. We were learning how to be a family without the old dynamics, without the roles we had played for so long. I did not resume the financial support, nor did they ask me to. Instead, we began building a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation or expectation. It was imperfect, sometimes difficult, but far more authentic than what we had before. The experience taught me something profound about self-worth and boundaries. For years I had tried to buy the love and acceptance my family seemed unwilling to give freely. I had allowed their judgment to define my value. But in walking away from that dynamic and refusing to continue funding my own exclusion, I had finally claimed my true worth. True family, I learned, is not about financial support or obligation. It is about mutual respect, honest communication, and the willingness to see each other as we truly are, not as we wish each other to be. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to establish clear boundaries and hold firm to your own value. If you have ever found yourself compromising your worth for acceptance, or giving more than you receive in relationships, remember that your value does not depend on others recognizing it. Sometimes walking away is not an act of anger, but an act of self-love, and a necessary step toward building healthier connections. I would love to hear your stories about setting boundaries with family members, or walking away from relationships that did not serve you. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? Please, share your experiences in the comments below, and do not forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone who might need to hear this message today. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you are worthy of respect and love exactly as you are.